are coming.
I believe Stafford's still away, is he not?
I haven't heard. Hey, there's Hilaria. Yeah, good. No. Okay, Corporate Officer, are we ready to proceed then?
Are ready to proceed.
Okay, well, thank you, and welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Town of Gibsons for October the 5th, 2021. I don't know how many more days till Christmas, but it's getting shorter. We're holding this meeting electronically again, and we're honored to be gather on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. And we have a full agenda today. I know there's a number of people in the audience relative to some of the projects we have, particularly the grants of assistance. And as we go through that, we'll give people an opportunity. If council has any questions, we'll just see how this is going to go in terms of the approval of those grants. I'll call the meeting to order. The time is 3:01 p.m. and ask firstly for council for approval of the agenda. Councilor Kroll, Councilor Ladwig, all in favor? Thank you. I'll ask also that all reports be received. Councilor Kroll, Councilor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. So we're going to go right into the first reports, and this is 3.1, and this is the Grants of Assistance Program. And I'll first give turn it over to the Director of Finance to introduce us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the 2021 budget for the Grants of Assistance Program is $20,000. And as you recall, in May, Council awarded $14,100 to 10 organizations that applied back in the first intake. And that's left $5,900 available for round two. And so for round two, we've received 6 applications. I've got them listed on page 1 of my report. Total requests are 9,500. We did include the full applications in the agenda, as well as some historical detail on what grants of assistance have been funded for the last 5 years. Individually, all of the funding requests are at or below the policy's 10% cap of $2,000 per organization. However, as you're noticing that there's the request is exceeding the budget by about $3,600. All the applications meet at least one of the priorities listed in the policy 2.7D. And we have reps from what looks like about 3, maybe 4 of the organizations here in the audience. If council, as Mary, you mentioned, has any questions for them. So I'll turn it back over to you, and I'm here to answer questions if you have any for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Council, how do you wish to proceed? Is there anybody who wants to make a quick motion, or are we going to take these one at a time and go through them? Councilor D'Andrade?
Thanks, Mayor. Based on the information that the Director of Finance gave it to us, I understand that the Susan Sun Bear Award application and the garden we could get from the COVID fund. No, sorry. The Sunshine Coast, sorry. Okay, my notes, I think I wrote the Hospice Society, right? No, sorry. The garden Kiwanis and the Susan Sun Bear in the Bill Allen, we can get this from the grant of assistance. Can we confirm that? And if council is willing to get both these grants from the COVID grants of assistance.
COVID refund. Okay, I'll turn that back to the Director of Finance so she could speak to the opportunity there. Director?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councilor D'Andrade, that's correct. So I reviewed the applications to see which ones would have qualified under the community COVID grant that council set up earlier this year. And yes, the garden group at Kiwanis Seniors Housing would qualify for $1,000. of that, and then the Mother Bones project as well. So that would free up $2,000 out of this request, which would leave then the shortfall at $1,600. Because the cap for the COVID grant is $1,000 per organization.
That actually frees up $3,000, Director, the $2,000 from the Kiwanis Society and the $1,000 for the Susan Bear. So
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it would, but the COVID grant caps at
right.
1,000.
1,000,
Yeah,
that's correct, yes.
yeah. I went around that circle too.
Yeah, good, okay. Well, does that give council any comfort as to an option? Councilor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Yeah, I, having gone through the grants, I just feel, a lot of them are very worthwhile causes, and it's just unfortunate that we were so generous earlier in the year. I'm just wondering, can we get a little more creative with the COVID funding? And because the garden group would qualify for 1,000. The Baseball Association didn't get any money from us, I don't believe, out of COVID, and they were certainly impacted with things and challenges because of COVID. So if we can just sort of chip away at this a bit, a little more creatively with the COVID funding, which I believe we're still in fairly good stead with. If other council members would be agreeable to that, I would make a motion that we approve all the grants as presented and look for additional funding to support the shortfall out of COVID funding.
Okay, is that a motion?
It just was seconded by Councillor Ladwig.
Seconded by Councilor Ladwig. Any further questions?
I would just ask if the Director of Finance could work with us in a creative manner to accommodate these requests.
I believe she's indicated that she could. Now, we may have to have the applicants, I don't know, would you want to reapply for a couple of them under the COVID funding, Director of Finance, or would we just assign it to COVID funding?
No, I would just assign it to COVID funding, and I have reviewed some former grant applications that would qualify, so that
Okay.
it is doable, and no need to reapply. That would not necessarily. Yeah.
Councilor Ladwig.
I'm just wondering if the hospice one would qualify
They have already received.
from the, oh, right, they're limited.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the only one I'm struggling with, although obviously I want to support the group. It is a proposal for core operations. And if we're following our criteria, I struggle with that one. That's my only exception. Not that I don't want to support it.
Okay, now, do we exhaust, Director of Finance, if we do this way, are we exhausting the $20,000, or is there change left over?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there would be, so if we funded, basically I could free up a total of $4,000 for out of the grants, out of the COVID fund. And so that would leave you an extra $400 from the grants of assistance funding.
Okay. And could we consider a second motion then to add that $400 to hospice? Councilor Kroll would move that. Would anybody second that?
Well, I took it as your motion and I'm
Okay,
seconding.
take it my motion, okay. So that would be a second, that would be an additional motion. So to fund that and then add the balance of the funds to hospice. And that's seconded. So Councilor Ladwig.
So sorry, just to clarify, you're saying that the total coming out of the grants and contribution program then would be $400 going towards the Hospice Society? Is that?
No, it would be it would be $1,400 going to hospice.
But they're
And,
only asking for 1,000.
well, we end up with $400 that we would be carrying over to next year if we don't deal with the 400.
I'm still confused. Like they're only asking for 1,000. So
If we give $1,000 to seniors plus $1,000 from the grants of assistance fund, so that'd be 2,000 to seniors. If we give 2,000 to the Mushurama Festival, and 1,500 to Clean Air, and 2,000 to the Baseball Association, and 1,000 to the Susan Bear from the COVID funds, and 1,000 to hospice from the grants. Then that leaves $400 in the grant fund that we would be carrying over to 2022. So I'm just saying, let's spend that $400 by giving it to one of the organizations on this list. And my recommendation, seconded by Councillor Kroll, is hospice.
But they've already received 1,000, have they not?
They would get 1,000, and we would.
No, they already have.
Yeah, they received 1,000 from the COVID, and they're asking for 1,000 here. I'm suggesting we give them another $400, and that depletes the $20,000 fund totally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just struggling because I was struggling with giving them funds in the first place, and now you just
made it harder for you. That's right.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. Not that I.
No, I mean, we could carry it over. We don't
Or
have.
you could give it to somebody else that actually qualifies for this grant.
We could do, but as there's somebody on that list, you can't give it over 2,000 because that's what the grant's for. Is maximum of $2,000, 10%. So where would you propose giving it then? Councillor Kroll, go ahead.
This is more just a query with Councillor Ladwig. The Sunshine Coast Hospice Society is really struggling. They've got 2 beds on the coast, and they're maxed out. It's volunteers that man the beds to give patients some dignity in dying. And, you know, I was going to ask the Director of Finance if they could apply for more funding from the COVID, because the need is huge. And, you know, the Hospice Society had 8 beds on the coast. We're down to 2. It's desperate. And COVID has impacted hugely on hospice. So.
Councillor Ladwig, go ahead.
I would be much more comfortable making a motion that we increase the amount that we can hand out from COVID, which I suppose I must have voted to support that because it's happened, but I've always felt that was low. So I would rather us go to 2,000 on that. And then at least we're funding organizations from pots of money that are appropriately designated for those purposes, just to keep the lines cleaner. I'm not saying I don't want to support the Hospice Society. I'm just saying if we've made it a criteria in the past that this particular pot wasn't going to go to ongoing operational core expenses, because you're kind of setting up a precedent then that's kind of what we can do. And we either do that or we don't. It's one or the other. And so why not find a funding pot that's more appropriately suited for what the requested need is than under this one.
Councillor D'Andrade?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Ladwig. I rather leave the 400 because it will be needed next year, and give them the 2,000 from the COVID fund.
We don't add it to the 2,000, that 20,000. It goes into surplus. Yeah. Yeah. Corporate officer.
Yes, I just need clarity on the motions. There's 2 motions.
I'm not presenting yet, but soon.
Sorry, Kirsten, are you unmuted?
Okay.
Kirsten, you're unmuted.
If you're gonna go, you should probably take your stuff upstairs to put on, like your coat and stuff, so that you don't have to make noise in the entryway when you go.
Kirsten,
Good
Rocket,
idea.
you're Kirsten, you're unmuted and we can hear you.
I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Just like there's 2 motions on the table, and I just want to be sure that because Tamara is here trying to keep records, and it's her first time to take minutes for a committee meeting. So I want to be sure she's able to capture the motion, and I also want to be sure the Director of Finance is getting the motion that she needs on the table. So what is listed at 3.1 is different than what I have heard expressed. So if we can be sure, the first part of the motion, from what I heard, was the council approve all of the grants requested, which I believe was for a maximum of 5,900, according to what's written here on your agenda package. and that alternative funds be accessed to cover the difference, which on the report looks to be a difference of about $3,600. So I'm confused now because the second motion is that we fund a $400 balance of funds not allocated as additional grants and assistance to, and then it was unclear for me who it was to go to. But if we're doing a $400 balance to be allocated, it doesn't mesh with the first motion, which is that all the funds have been allocated. So
all of the funds were allocated, but only 4,600 or rather, but 2,000 was being allocated from the COVID funds.
okay. So that would be the recommendation to council will be to allocate funding consistent with the goals of the grant of assistance policy to a maximum of $5,900, with $2,000 of those funds being sourced from COVID funding. And then that the $400 balance remaining be allocated to as an additional grant to whomever you decide.
Yeah, I think we're still a little bit confused. We've got six. We've got a total of $9,500 in requests.
There was 4,000 coming from COVID, which left the
4,000 is coming from.
balance.
That's correct. That's correct. That's not 2,000. 4,000 is coming from COVID. That's correct.
Okay.
That makes a difference. And that, as we say, leaves $400 on the table. But let's deal first of all with the motion that's been moved and seconded by Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, that we fund to the that we fund the $9,500, of which 4,000 will come from COVID funding. All in favor of that? Sorry. Okay, Councillor Ladwig again.
I supported the motion as our corporate officer just read it out, that we fund all these projects and whatever remaining balance is required comes from COVID, and that we task staff to figure out how to find those funds.
Okay.
That's what I heard, and that's what I seconded, and that's what I'll support.
Okay. Okay, we all understand Councillor D'Andrade.
Yes, and so instead of taking 2,000 to support the hospice society, we can take from the COVID fund only 1,600, because $400 will be taken from the other fund. So that's just to support what Councillor Ledwick said.
That's correct. It'd be $1,600 coming from, and the balance will all come from our current grants and assistance fund. Does that make sense to you, Director of Finance? Can you work with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify. So the total amount that is being awarded tonight or today is 9,500. So
That's
no
correct.
change. Okay, and then I will fund forth.
Yeah,
the
of which
3,600.
5,900 will come from the grants of assistance, and the balance will come from the COVID funding.
That's great. And I'll work with the corporate officer and admin to get the wording of that motion later on. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. So that's done. Thank you. So we've exhausted this year's grants of assistance. We still have funds available in the COVID fund for organizations that are eligible to apply for it. And so that that will still be available through the end of the year. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I believe we had an amendment to that motion on the table, which,
We lost it. It's gone.
okay. That's all right.
Forget about it. Okay, that's the motion. Okay.
Done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for organizations that are observing, watching us in a little bit confusing process. That was just the first resolution of the day. It's we'll still have lots more to go. So we will carry on our agenda package. And thank you for taking time to be with us today. The next one is the Communications Coordinator Community Amenity Contribution Policy Survey results. And this is pages 89 to 92 in your agenda. And I believe there were a couple of additional pages added to this. today. So we'll go through and who is going to speak to this, corporate officer?
I believe Kirsten Rockins is speaking to that today.
Sorry, no, I'll just jump in there. Elizabeth Quayle was going to present this one. Could you please bring her in, Rebecca?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth joined you now.
Elizabeth, good afternoon. We are
Hi.
we're on the item for the community amenity contribution and your report. So I'll allow you to please introduce your report.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out how to share my screen here.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oops. Is that working?
Yes, if you could just make the PowerPoint larger, please.
Okay.
It'll go larger when you start the slideshow.
Pardon me?
It will go larger when you start slideshow.
Oh, it will when I start the slideshow. Okay, thank you. All right, so that worked?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so as part of its work to update Gibson's community amenity and affordable housing contributions policy, council requested that staff undertake a survey to determine which amenities are most important to our community. The survey was launched on July 12th, 2021, with promotions appearing in the Coast Reporter, social media, and in the town's digital newsletter. By the time the survey closed on August 23rd, it had attracted 384 respondents. Generally, the survey showed that affordable housing, ongoing investment in our outdoor spaces, and maintenance of existing infrastructure remain the top priorities for our community. The first survey question asked respondents to rank 10 community amenities in order of their importance. Each amenity then received an overall score based on how many people rated it as number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. The bar chart shows the ranking position of each amenity from most popular to least popular. And as you can see, improvements to outdoor recreational facilities was the most popular, while heritage conservation and public art were not considered priorities. The second question asked respondents if there were any other public amenities they would like developers to contribute to. This generated a wide variety of responses with several themes emerging. As we've seen before, the community expressed a strong desire for more pickleball courts, more affordable housing, and more investment in public outdoor spaces like our parks and beaches, the sea walk, walking trails, and forest areas. The third question asked respondents to indicate what percentage of developer cash contributions they thought should be placed in the community amenity contribution reserve and the affordable housing reserve. While individual answers range from placing 0% to 100% in each of the two funds, the average generated by the 366 people who responded to this question was that 56% of the cash contribution should be placed in the CAC reserve and 44% should be placed in the affordable housing reserve. So based on these survey results, staff is recommending that council direct staff to update section 4.1.1 of the new community amenity contribution policy to allocate the CAC revenue as follows: 44% to the town's affordable housing reserve fund and 56% to the town's general amenity contribution reserve. And that council replaces existing policy 3.14 with the new community amenity contribution policy as amended with the CAC revenue allocations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I want to use your title, but your title's not beside your name there, so I'm just going to call you Elizabeth Quayle. Thank you. What I'd like to do is open this up to council now to any questions or comments they have relative to the process, including the policy itself, which is on page 117 of the agenda. So questions, comments, council? Councillor Kroll.
I just wanted to thank Elizabeth for this report. I know it was a lot of material to wade through. Something I was a little surprised at is, I thought we'd have sort of a slightly higher response to this. And I know Elizabeth put all the feelers out, and I'm just, people want to have part in community decision making, and you give them the opportunity and they don't respond. I think we're looking at something, Elizabeth could probably correct me, but we're looking at about 7% of the population responded. And I just find that a little disheartening. And I appreciate Elizabeth's pain, because she went to a lot of work in, creating this whole platform for people to respond in, and then we don't get the return. So I don't know what we do to get more participation with future, surveys. And, I'm prepared to, I'll just leave it there for now.
And I can just respond a little bit to that. This is actually the most response we've gotten to any survey in the history. I think we've done 8 surveys now. We just started doing them a couple of years ago. And this is, I think, maybe twice as many as the second largest response we've had. So I actually thought it was a pretty good response, just based on our track record so far. So it is growing. I feel like more people participate with each survey, and hopefully that will continue.
Well, I just hope that, for all the work and time you put into it, that it's good news, that things are improving. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Councillor Deandrade.
Thank you. I think it would be interesting. One thing that has been discussed here in field meetings is that August and July are not good months for surveys. I mean, it may not make a difference if we have done right now. For example, I can feel people are more engaged now. Summer, people are just, just doing activities that they cannot do year round. So I would prefer having these surveys done like in the months that we believe, not too close to Christmas, and pick the times. It might not make a difference, but that would be my preference in the future.
Councillor Ludwig.
I'm wondering if someone can just remind me on process, and I apologize, but we see a lot of reports. So have we already adopted this new CAC policy, and now we're just amending this one portion? No, this is right now we are amending the CAC policy.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're amending and adopting, or not adopting, but we're.
That's correct.
Looking at the whole. Okay.
We're replacing.
Replacing.
The resolution is we're replacing the existing 314 with a new. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, if that's the case, just so I can feel comfortable speaking to this in the future, I was wondering if the Director of Planning could just remind me of how our CAC targets have changed from the previous policy to now.
I can answer that through the mayor. Thank you. So this policy is much more clear. So it's very specific. It outlines where the funds are going to go, what the rates are. So the big difference in this policy is it has target rates in it. So the intention around that is to be more transparent in the negotiation process so that developers can calculate upfront what the cost of a rezoning process would be, for example. And it's just more clear, basically. The other policy speaks to taking a contribution based on 10 or more units in density. So the other difference here is we're taking a contribution based on the uplift or the value, the land lift of the rezoning. And it doesn't matter if you're getting 1 extra unit or if you're getting 20 extra units, the town would receive a contribution based on each added unit. So each density unit increase. That's the main difference.
Okay, thank you. It's just good to have that kind of recap of what has shifted. Okay, so as far as the actual target rates go, they, for the most part, they stay the same. It's just how they're being applied that's changing.
Well, sorry. So before we did not have target rates. So we didn't have target rates at all. And it was a straight up negotiation. And so it was not always consistent. So it was every single rezoning was a negotiation. And so there was not a consistent approach to what the town was asking for and what the policy basically directed the director of planning to negotiate amenities without boundaries. So it was very difficult to implement, and it was very unclear about what the town was looking for or asking for. This policy has target rates, and it would say based on the cash contribution, a certain amount would go towards the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, or a certain amount would go to the Community Amenity Reserve Fund, and then council could build up those reserve funds with each rezoning, and you would be able to see the money come into the reserves.
And finally, if I may, and then I'm done. And for the most part, the development community preferred this approach because at least then they could budget around it. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I could wade back into the question of the survey, I actually think it was a very good survey. I think that what we can learn from this is that we need to take a little bit longer time frame on surveys if we're going to put them out. I don't think we can decide what time of year we're going to do a survey because our work dictates when we're going to be doing things. So we can't save all the surveys to the fall and then have a whole bunch of work flow out of that because we do work year round, so that we have to just say. But I think given time frame of this I think was out there for at least a month. And I think that's probably a good time frame if we can afford it to put a survey out. And because even if people are on vacation, they're still accessible to look on the website, or they're going to be back from vacation. It was in the newspaper. There's a lot of work done to get this information out. So I think it was a good survey result. I also think that in these things, we should not lose track of the comments that have been received, because there's more in the comment section than we just report on. So I think that council reading through and highlighting the comments and remembering those things is important. And finally, I would actually like to add and we haven't moved any resolutions yet, but I'd like to add an and that policy 3.14 be reviewed annually in the fall of each year before budget, so that we can understand how it's been working. And so that if there's any adjustments we need to be made to it, at least maybe not each year, but maybe in the fall of 2022, and we can decide then if we want to do it again. But at least then we understand how it's worked. We would have a year of experience with it, and then see if there's adjustments we feel need to be made to it prior to the next budget year. And so I think that would be just a good timing to sit down and look at it again. So we'll go to Councillor Kroll.
I would certainly move the motion as amended. I think the review is good, and it gives everyone time to sort of reflect on how the system's working.
So just understand that you're moving the motions as they appear on page 89 of the agenda, plus the additional one that I suggested.
Exactly, sir.
Do I have a seconder for that? Are you seconding, Councilor Ladwig? I'm sorry, you're unmuted. I can't.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Kroll seconded it.
I didn't move the whole motion. I was just suggesting an and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because yeah, so I'm just suggesting an and that to the agenda. So
Sorry, we're all off a little bit today.
And I moved the motion as amended.
Yeah. Okay, Director of Planning.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to flag for you, Section 8 talks about the review date in the policy, and it says the target rates will be reviewed every 2 to 5 years. So that was the timeline in the policy.
I'd like to, because this is the first time in this policy, I'd like to review it next year, and then after that we can jive it with the policy. So that this just because this is totally new to us on this one. Thank you very much for bringing that. Councilor Diandrade, has it been seconded yet, first of all? Not seconded. Okay. Somebody want to make a new motion?
Sorry, Mayor. I have
Councilor
some thoughts. Even though the survey shows 44% for affordable housing and 56, so great, we have a sense of what the respondents want. What I felt with the new CAC policy is that somehow, in terms of affordable housing, we are losing, because before we had a policy that any development over 10 units, we will give 1 unit for affordable housing. And now 10 units will be $40,000, which doesn't do almost anything. So that's the part. And then, I mean, the new policy is like if a subdivision is more than 10 lots, I mean, we completely changed. So I'm not too happy with and even the values of 4,000, 3,000. I know some municipalities got this amount. Other municipalities, if you look at North Saanich, they are way more. So I appreciate your motion, and I'm happy to second after. But what I was going to say is, even though the community expressed the 44, 56, somehow I feel that this policy, it's not giving the contributions enough to all the amenities that we need. And somehow affordable housing, we have other ways of getting funding. The province and the federal government, they're making big investments. So while we don't get too many grants to do all the other stuff that is required, so at least to start, I would like to move, I know it's a small difference, but I would do 40% affordable housing and 60. It's a minor change, but I just feel that we with this new CAC, we lost chances to get more affordable housing, and now we are penalizing the community amenity contributions because we put affordable housing as a community amenity contribution in this package. So I have a little bit difficult with this policy, but I will do this amendment, and I appreciate your amendment, your motion to review yearly, not only the CAC policy of the amount we are charging, but also this ratio, because I feel that more and more we are losing contribution. So we are allowing for more density, but the contribution we are getting are not as even like we had in the past.
Councilor Kroll?
Correct me if I'm wrong. In the past, we were only getting contributions towards affordable housing on projects where there were 10 units or more. And now we're getting contribution towards amenities and affordable housing on every project. So what we may be losing on the roundabouts, I think we're gaining on the swings, because looking at sort of land available in the community, I think there are going to be more one-off subdivisions of small properties where we'll be gaining smaller amounts. And, how many more projects are going to be coming down the tubes with 10 or more? So I'm assuming that in the presentation of this, this whole amenities contribution policy, that staff took that into consideration and feel that we're probably, hopefully, ahead of the game, not behind the 8 ball.
Is anybody seconding Councilor Dietrad's motion?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, not seeing a seconder. For further discussion. We've been working on this. I'll remind council, we've been working on this for some time. It seemed to be going the way of many other projects that we do. Ask staff to do a survey, change the results, and have nothing at the end of the day. So I'd like to encourage council to make a decision today. So now, Councilor Ladwig, you haven't spoken yet.
I just support the motions as presented by staff. Not that I don't always agree with more review, but I think every 2 to whatever it was years as it's written in the policy is fine. And I'd like to see it build up a little bit more before we ask staff to spend more time on doing reviews. Like, I just think our staff are really busy right now, and I think 2 years is reasonable. And so I'm happy with them as written. So that's the only reason I'm not voting. Like, I'm not sure exactly how we're packaging these motions going forward, but I support them as written. That's all I'm trying to say.
Are you moving the motions as written?
Yes, I don't know if I can, because I think there's already one on the table right now.
No, it was not seconded.
Okay, so then I'll move them as written.
Seconded now, Councillor Kroll. Yeah, and I'm fine. I mean, I prefer an early review of a policy after it's been adopted and amended, but hey, 2 years is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So further discussion. The recommendations as presented on page 89 are on the floor. See nothing further, I'm going to call the question.
No, Mayor Beamish, just for clarification, because you mentioned the 2 years, but I'm not seeing did we say 2 years? The policy will be amended after 2 years?
It's in the policy itself.
Oh, it's in a policy. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay.
So all in favor of the motion? Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, staff. And it's a challenge to get these things done. I appreciate that. And Elizabeth, for all your work on the survey. I really do think, and I agree with you, that it's great to see a number. We'll never get 100%. Seeing the numbers increasing is really good to see. And seeing a broad base gives us some work to do. We have some good ideas arising out of this in terms of projects that people like to work on. Things that we have on the table already, a dog park, things that we know about, things like paddle boards and tennis courts and things of that nature to work on. Community amenities are important in any place. So thank you for that. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. And it was just a query. I interpreted your and that staff give us a report on how this new process was working in a year. So we would get a report from staff saying we've generated, $625,000 in.
We'll get that anyway. We'll get that anyway in the quarterly reports. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further questions on that, we've actually moved something forward. Thank you very much. Yeah. We'll go now to the next report, and this is the flood exemption and variances for porch and deck construction at 466 Marine Drive. And Kirsten Rockins, planner, come forward, please.
And now having trouble unmuting. Thank you, Mayor. So going smaller scale now, this application is for a development variance permit and flood exemption to allow construction of a new deck, a front porch roof, and landscape retaining walls for an existing home on the waterfront at 466 Marine Drive. The purpose of the report is to obtain direction from the committee to council on whether to proceed with next steps of the application, including notifying neighbors of the variance request. Yeah. The subject property, which is outlined here in blue, is located on the seaward side of Marine Drive, just east of Jack's Lane. The property fronts onto Marine Drive on the uphill side of the property and onto the public seawalk and marine shore on the downslope side. The lot has an existing single-family dwelling and boathouse that are shown in air photos to have been built earlier than 1964, as well as a parking garage fronting onto Marine Drive. Built prior to the current bylaws and not conforming with the current setbacks and lot cover for the property, the home is considered to be legally non-conforming. And the owners are currently renovating the aging building for continued use as a single-family dwelling. The zoning of the property is CDA 1, and this zone, which is shown on the bylaw map in purple, was applied to a number of adjacent properties on the Marine Drive waterfront prior to completion of the most recent official community plan. The intent of the zoning was to permit, and this is I won't say it's a quote, but to permit existing single-family uses to continue while limiting redevelopment that might fall outside the intent of the OCP and neighborhood plans that were at the time to be developed. Sorry, what's on the screen is a quote. The setbacks for the zone were established at a very significant 10.5 meters from all lot lines, and maximum impermeable lot cover for the lot was set at 25% of the lot area, which both together severely limit new development within the zone. The property also falls within the view protection subarea A, which modifies some of the property line setbacks, allowing a 0 meter front lot line setback and 4.5 meter rear yard setback. Nonetheless,
Sorry to jump in here.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm just wondering if everyone is seeing Kirsten's presentation or if it's frozen on the first page.
It's frozen. Sorry, I was actually following in the.
oh, are you kidding?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Leslie.
No problem. We can see just the main page with your notes. So we're not
Oh,
seeing
okay,
we're not
sorry.
seeing the presentation.
Well, you could see it in tiny format. I will try again here. When I was trying to share, it was hiding the screen I want to share, so we'll try it a different way. Now are you seeing my current page with a quote?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
So as the width of the property is only 20 meters, the 10.5 meter side setbacks mean that no additions are possible on the lot without a variance. So the owners are currently renovating the home for continued use, as I mentioned, as a single family dwelling. And the proposed renovations to the exterior of the home include replacement of the existing deck on the waterfront side of the home with a larger covered deck. That's the one in the left-hand photo. And also extension of the existing roof line at the front of the property by 1.2 meters or 3 feet, 3 feet 10 inches to provide shelter on the front porch entrance. Are you able to see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, so this front porch area that's concreted this roof line would be extended out to cover the paved front porch area. So lastly, the applicants also propose landscaping, including retaining walls at the waterfront side of the home to improve slope stability and usability of the lot and to allow for revegetation. The plans for the landscape work are supported with reports and a revegetation plan from a qualified environmental professional and geotechnical engineer, as are required within the 2 development permit areas applying to the lot, the environmentally sensitive DP area and geotechnical hazards area. So this image shows a side view of the proposed home additions. At the top right, you can see the new extended roof over the front porch with supporting posts. And at the rear of the home on the waterfront side, the new larger deck with a glazed roof over top. So in plan view, we see the location of the new additions in the context of the lot. As the existing home is sited close to the southeast side property line, this line here, the porch roof extension requires a variance to allow further encroachment of the roof line within the 10.5 meter side yard setback. So this addition on the front of the home is causing further encroachment to the side yard. The setback is shown in blue with a 0.8 meter distance between the lot line and the edge of the roof. The proposed new deck on the waterfront side of the home, shown with hatching, would extend 1.2 meters beyond the home on the northeast, to the northeast, and about a ½ meter beyond the existing deck toward the water, with additional coverage due to extending the outer corner of the deck from the current U shape. So this will be supported with 2 new footings. The deck requires a variance to the side yard from 10.5 meters to 4.56 meters. Also, as the proposed deck will add to the impermeable lot cover, a variance is also required to relax the lot cover from the permitted 25% under the zone to 36%. It's worth noting that the typical lot cover permitted for a single family lot would be 45 to 50%. So with all included, the requested variances are to relax part 14.6, section 2 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the south interior side lot line setback from 10.5 meters to 8.8 meters to permit extension of the home's existing roof line over the front porch, and to reduce the north interior side lot line setback from 10.5 meters to 4.5 meters to permit the proposed northeast side deck. And finally, to relax part 14.5 of the zoning bylaw, increasing the maximum lot cover from 25% to 30%. So in considering variances, policy requires council to consider certain criteria which are discussed in the report. These are under Council Policy 3.9. And these include that the variance will not result in significant impacts on neighboring properties, that there's a demonstrated need for the variance, that the overall intent of the original bylaw requirement or standard is not compromised, that the variance does not appear to establish a precedent for other properties, but responds to a site-specific situation or difficulty, and that the variance results in suitable development that is an asset and compatible within the context of surrounding land uses. So staff finds that all of these criteria are met, given that the intent of the CDA1 zoning is to allow the existing single-family use of the lot to continue, and that the variances are required to allow reasonable development of the non-conforming home. Staff does not anticipate significant negative impacts to neighbors, and while the applicant did approach neighbors about the proposal and encountered no concerns, neighbors will be notified and provided an opportunity to comment prior to a decision on the applications. So last but not least, part 4.11 of the town zoning bylaw outlines floodplain requirements, including a 15-meter flood setback requirement from the natural boundary of the sea, as shown earlier in the site survey. The Local Government Act doesn't allow floodplain requirements to be varied as with property line setbacks, but it does permit the town to provide an exemption to the flood setback requirements through, if the town sees it as advisable and has received a report certified by a professional engineer or geoscientist experienced in geotechnical engineering that the land may be used safely for the use intended. So the applicant submitted a report by Ground Up Geotechnical, which is attached to the report, in support of the proposed uses on the property, including the deck and retaining walls, which are within the designated flood setback. And staff have reviewed the findings of the report and find that the recommendations meet the requirements of the town and the Local Government Act for authorizing the requested exemption. Staff also finds that the proposed construction is advisable as it would enhance the usability, safety, environmental resilience, and appearance of the existing dwelling without expected negative impacts to surrounding uses or the natural environment, and therefore recommends issuance of the flood exemption. So if council wishes to proceed with consideration of the variance request and flood exemption, which are required for the proposal, the next step toward approval is to notify neighbors of the variance. Flood exemptions don't require a neighbor letter. The draft letter is enclosed with the report. I've also suggested that these recommendations be forwarded to tonight's council meeting for adoption so that we can proceed with notifications as early as possible. These are listed on page 1 of the report. And of course, we'll bring back neighbor comments before a decision on either of the applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsten, for your report. I don't see a recommendation pertaining to the flood exemption. Are we going? Do you anticipate that we will be putting one in later, or should we be putting it in now?
Sorry, I'm trying to turn on my.
Yeah.
Here we go. Video. I'll speak without video. Yeah, the report. Because the flood exemption and variances are both required for the same development, the thought was that we would refer or send notifications to neighbors and then come back for a decision on both the variance and the flood exemption. But as this won't come back to committee, I would suggest that any discussion on both happen at this meeting, if that makes sense.
And is it practice to register the geotech report on title? And
yes, it will be registered through the DPA1 and also the flood exemption.
Thank you. Questions, council? Any questions, any councilors? Want somebody like to move the recommendations? Councilor Ladwig?
I'll move the recommendations. And in doing so, I also just want to commend Kirsten on yet again another really great report. I really appreciated the geotechnical consultants report being attached to the report from staff. I also really appreciated her assessment of or rationale for why she thought that this proposal should move forward. I always appreciate hearing staff's perspective on why they've come to the conclusion that they have. anyway, so I just wanted to say thank you, Kirsten. I thought it was a great report, and yeah, I'll move the motions.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any further discussion? Councillor Kroll first, and then Councillor Deidre.
I just sort of wanted to second what Councillor Ludwig said. I thought it was a great report. And I was really thankful for all the information provided. You know, I know that these homes along Marine Drive are sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as any sort of, so I really appreciate the effort that staff's gone to work with the property owner to maintain a home and not end up as a vacant lot.
Thank you. Councillor Deidre.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very comprehensive report. I think my concern is with the floodplain, because the deck I mean, the house is already non-conforming. And now they're asking, oh, it's non-conforming, but can I expand further? I mean, there's no need to expand the deck further, you know, towards the ocean. I think this would create, there's already, the column will be 1 meter in the flood zone. I understand that the geotechnical people, they're saying, the experts are saying, well, the structure will be okay, but I feel like this is a floodplain. The town might have plans in the future to increase the sidewalk because of climate change. So we are saying, okay, you can come 1 meter further, but we know that climate change, what the reports that we have from 2014 talks about how, you know, the issues that we have with our sidewalk. We might have to do a whole arrangement. So I feel nervous that we are saying, okay, you can come 1 meter and over the floodplain. And what happens if it's a matter of 5 years, or even 6, 7, 8 years, we need to do a whole adjustment of the sidewalk. So now the deck is going to be really encroaching. And that's my concern. I think there's a new climate change report happening. We should engage in the new projection to try to understand. But it makes me nervous that we are saying okay to this variance regarding the floodplain.
Thank you. And Kirsten, just to clarify, there's no actual construction going into the floodplain. It's the overhang. Is that correct?
Well, in terms of construction, there would be 2 posts supporting the deck. This is in an area that's.
I don't see
Yeah.
them in the diagram.
I can.
Yeah, I see the posts as being more in line with the building.
If you see the site plan shows the location of the posts in the hatched area of the deck.
Page 131.
131, that one.
Mayor, is on the geological assessment, where on page 109 of the agenda, where he talks about that. So the boundary is 15 meters, and the column will be approximately 40 meters. So there's a 1 meter encroachment.
Okay.
If I may clarify,
Yes, right.
the entire home, a large chunk of the home is actually in the 15-meter setback. So the setback from the natural boundary is actually 4.5 meters with the deck, and 7.3 meters, not including the deck, to the corner of the home.
Councillor Ludwig.
To me, the future stability of this building in relation to flooding is I see it as a liability issue. And as long as the geotechnical report is attached to the property, as I believe was confirmed earlier,
Yes.
then from a liability standpoint, anybody buying this building in the future knows the risk they're taking on. And as far as I'm concerned, that satisfies my concerns. If you want to buy a property in a floodplain zone, you have a right to do that, but I think it's only prudent that we make sure that people buying those properties understand the risks. If they want to move 1.5 meters closer into the floodplain zone, to me, considering the circumstances, I'm okay with that, as long as future buyers know what they're getting themselves into. And so that's why I support it. And I will also just say that It's just because I wanted to say this earlier and I forgot to. I'm just really pleased that the new owners are choosing to restore this old timer, because I have a soft spot for the old timers in Gibson. So I'm really glad that that's the approach you're taking.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Further to what Councillor Ledwig was saying, with the armoring that they're doing to stabilize the bank, I would, and I believe the report with respect to the floodplain and the geotechnical work that was done on the site, that it's helping mitigate the flood effect, So I think there's a number of factors that are coming into play to mitigate potential hazard. I'm prepared to move the report as presented.
Yeah, it's on the table, yeah. Yeah, I'm struggling with it myself. I struggle with the idea that we would set the flood, and I know we have the geotechnical report, and we have a number of areas where that does come into play, both here and along other waterfront areas. And as long as the geotechnical report is registered with the, do we put a covenant on these properties, corporate officer or director of planning or Chris Kirsten, do we put a covenant on them as well?
Yes, we register a section 219 covenant with the geotechnical report attached.
Okay, and so that then requires them to accept all the responsibility for the activity.
That's correct.
You note the seashell was just kind of given another level of coverage for the 219 covenants. Yeah. Okay. Councilor Diandrat.
Mayor, so what happens in, let's say, even in 8 years, we need to move the sidewalk. So can we think in terms of encroachment? I mean, we already know that this property is already encroaching. Obviously, we're not going to tear apart the house. I get that. And I appreciate all the renovations, but I just wonder, why are we saying, oh, okay, you can still expand further the setback that it has been allowed, just because we cannot tear the house apart, but this is a new construction. So that's the part that I feel it needs.
And just to clarify to Councilor Diandrat, it's not a sidewalk that we have there. We have a right of way. That's a right of way. It's a right of way that we have running along the harbor, not a sidewalk. So it's the right of way from the province.
Well,
we just happen to walk on top of it.
It is a transport corridor, a pedestrian corridor.
It's our sewer pipe. Yeah, Kirsten?
Yeah, if I can provide some clarification, if I may, Mayor. May I share my screen to show the aerial view with the lot line?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. There we go. So this is the blue area shown. The blue boundary is the lot, roughly the lot line. In the survey, you would have, it's actually based on the natural boundary of the sea. So the current lot line would be more like up a little ways from what's in our GIS. But I just wanted to clarify for Councillor Diandrat that it's not encroaching on town property. The boathouse is, but we're not looking at that development right now. It is within their property, but encroaching in a required flood setback. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you.
Mayor Beamish, you're muted.
Yeah. Kirsten, could you put that last picture back up, please?
Yes.
Sorry.
There.
So what is happening to the property to the south?
The property to the south.
it also appears to be well over the, well into the setback area.
Yes, all of the, I mean, I can show you where 15
Yeah.
meters would be. It's been the town's practice. In the absence of a sort of managed retreat program, our practice has been to rely on geotechnical reports in the way that,
Yeah.
sorry, measurement. To wait for the. So 15 meters is about here, occupying most of the width of the lot, the depth of the lot.
Okay, so we're not, it's not anything so exceptional that the other properties are not enjoying the same setbacks and things. Yeah. Okay, I was actually a little bit afraid that the deck might actually be too close to the property to the north, but I see it really isn't. There's still quite a bit of space there, so. Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and that is the motion to accept the recommendations as presented. Are we prepared to call the question on that? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Okay. So this will come back to us as a variance report, and we'll have another chance to look at it. I would like to see as a final recommendation, Kirsten, that we are actually aware of the setback and the geotech report and relative to the waterfront, so that be part of what we approve.
Sorry, can I get you to say that again, Mayor?
I guess I'm used to resolutions that actually acknowledge the geotech report to be registered on title
Oh, okay.
practice, but I think it's good practice also to put as part of a resolution.
Subject to a section 219 covenant being registered with the geotechnical report?
That's correct, yeah. That can come back later when we consider the final recommendation on this. Okay. So that was approved. So we go now to your referrals on the variances. Anything else on that item, Councilor? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda is the inquiries. And at this time, we'll invite anybody who's in the audience who wishes to ask a question of council. You can even ask them a favorite councilor if you like.
I see no hands raised, Mayor Beamish.
No hands raised. Okay. Well, then I thank you all very much for participating and sharing this time with us. And the next regular committee of the whole will be held on October 19th at 3 p.m. That's a Tuesday again. And I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilor Ludwig, Councilor Kroll, thank you very much. And we will be back here at 6 o'clock for public hearings. We have 2 of which we have tonight. So we will see you all at 6 o'clock. Thank you again very much. Take care. And thank you, staff.